Yes.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, we're trying to get a little speaker here to work, so just bear with us a second, okay?
Okay.
Is it working now, Pam?
Not really expecting that on the microphone because you.
Not really.
What's going on? I'm here. Still there?
Yeah.
Home residents don't get over it now, so they'll be fun by November 1st.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't
Can you hear
hear you.
me?
Yeah, I don't hear you on the.
That's Uncle Jim.
Yeah, no, you're third.
You there?
Put in my calendar. I got the date on it.
Say again.
Hello?
Oh, now we're.
Franny, how we doing back there? Can you hear or what?
Lori B.
George, what about you?
I can hear fine.
You want a blanket, pillow, or anything?
First day back today.
Thank you very much.
All right, before we get started, I have a resolution which may or may not be approved by the committee tonight. But what I'm going to do is, so you can have a chance to look at it, I'm going to put it in the back of the room here. I'll get copies. This is something that even the committee themselves are not aware of, but it's something that I came across late this evening, which is something that's going to benefit, it's going to affect everybody here in Tabernacle. So I'll leave it back here on the back chair. Do you have a copy? I gave you a copy. Yeah. Here you go.
Janet has a...
That's it.
You're welcome. All right, thanks. You're welcome.
Again, this is a resolution that may or may not be voted on, but I thought, in essence of the paper trail, we would get everyone an opportunity to have a copy of it. This evening, we will have Mrs. Brown on speaker. I'm also expecting a phone call from Mr. Yates, who is traveling. He's going to be calling into the meeting a little later on. So please bear with us. At this time, I'd like to call the meeting of the Tabernacle Township Committee to order. Please join me in saluting the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America. To the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sunshine News. This meeting is called pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The special meeting of November the 13th, 2017 was sent to the Central Record, Burlington County Times, and Courier Post on October the 23rd, 2017. Also in the bulletin board in Town Hall, it has remained continuously posted as required notices under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. We have roll call, Mr. Barton.
Present.
Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Franzen,
Here.
Mr. Yates, Mayor Lee.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, LaShawn. At this time, I'm going to ask for public comment on agenda items only. If you're interested in being heard this evening, please raise your hand. I will call on you. You will notice we do have some public comment for other items, specifically a public hearing, second reading on a bond ordinance. At this time, we'll open up for you to the public. Stuart?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, committee. Procedural question on the resolution regarding the maintenance of fire breaks. It's not technically on the agenda, but it was passed out. Are you accepting comments on that?
We will during the public comment period. Yeah.
Okay.
Or you can, I guess you can comment on it now. Well, actually, no, you can't, because I haven't discussed it yet. So it's not on the agenda yet, essentially.
Okay.
We are, as a courtesy to the public, I said I'm going to present this tonight. And it hasn't been put on the agenda, obviously, before this evening. I'm going to be discussing it tonight. I'll probably do it under reports. But there will be an opportunity to be able to comment on it before it's voted on.
Okay. I'd like to comment on it at that time.
Okay.
I do have a comment on resolution 2017-80. If I have the number right, that's the one that regards the DOT grant application for the repair of Carranza Road. I understand, well, just to clarify for the public, could you clarify where the beginning and end of that proposed grant would cover? I'd also like to, and I ask that because I know Carranza gets kind of odd at the point where the paper road.
That's your question. Dan, you want to take that? Please?
Sure. We're starting, there's a seam in the pavement at where Tuckerton Road on paper exists. So it's actually Fork Neck. It's right down Fork Neck a little bit because Tuckerton ends at Fork Neck, but then on paper it extends through. So there's a curve in Carranza and there's a seam there, and that's where we're starting, heading towards Moores Meadow, and we'll go as far as I would assume the DOT grant will permit us to.
And how much are we asking for?
We've asked for, I believe it's a little under 500,000, but typically the grants that are given out by DOT for this type of project are somewhere in the neighborhood of 200,000.
And how does that compare to the total cost, estimated total cost?
Down at the Moores Meadow, it's less than half.
That is, the 200,000 that we might get is less than half? Or the
Yes.
500,000 we're asking for is less than
The
half?
200 is less than half of what it would take to get to Moores Meadow.
Okay, so I guess total cost is roughly,
Like I said, it's a little under 500,000.
okay.
Kim, can you hear okay? Kim, you,
It's a little hard.
whoever is going to be making public comment, if you could speak up a little bit, that'd be great.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, yes, thank you.
Okay, the resolution.
Second of all, I'm not a clock. She's my clock girl. Don't make me run the timer.
All right.
Okay?
I'll
I think you got about a minute.
The resolution involves Chemung Township. Do we have anything in writing from Chemung, and what is the extent of their involvement?
Carranza Road is, the center line of Carranza Road is the boundary. So half of the road is located in Chemung Township, and Chemung has given permission and passed a resolution authorizing Tabernacle to make the application to DOT for that portion.
And are they, have they committed to another grant if another grant becomes necessary to finish the job?
No, they have not committed to any grant application for Carranza Road at this point.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you said they passed a resolution.
Authorizing Tabernacle to make application for the repaving of Carranza Road. They did not make an application.
Okay, understood. And what's this anticipated schedule for hearing back from DOT, and if all goes well, initiating the work, completing the work?
There's no way to know when DOT would actually issue their decision on the grant application. We made application last month. I would anticipate probably in the March area is when we would see it, but that's completely up to the state, so there's no way to know for sure.
How long will the job take to complete?
The job would be probably about 3 months, 3 to 4 months with bidding.
Okay, thanks very much.
Any other comments from the public? Mr. Jones?
Jim Jones, 16 Wilton Way. Well, a question on the municipal land use. Is that having to do with the school board, or is this something different? Because I know that there was some talk about the township trying to acquire the section property over here to build, put something up. Is that what this is about, or is it something else?
It's an update. One of the charges I had at our last meeting was we're meeting with the Highlands Commission regarding overall land use within the township, and I have to update the board on that. So yeah, answer your question, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other comments from the public? Ms. Brooks, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everybody. It seems like months before it hasn't gone by. We had another meeting. Fran Brooks, Moore's Meadow Road. Back to this grant for some NJD that you applied for from NJDOT. It's my understanding that there are, what's the second grant that you can apply for, Stuart?
Infrastructure grant.
An infrastructure grant. So which grant did you apply for? Hello?
So I can answer that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer it.
It's the, this is the municipal aid grant, which DOT offers every year to every municipality in the state of New Jersey. It's a, basically it's for local roads. So it's the same application that we paved Tuckerton Road with a couple of years ago, and that we applied last year for, I believe,
Okay. But you're not applying for an infrastructure grant?
At this point, we're not applying for any other grants right now. And there's infrastructure grants. There's other grants that DOT administers. But the one that we applied for is really the one that is most applicable for our local roads.
We kind of have an understanding that the infrastructure grants, and clearly we're not experts on it, so we will rely on your expertise, but that there are these infrastructure grants that DOT gives out, and that it seems from our discussions with various people in DOT that Carranza Road, at least that portion that we're proposing, and you're proposing, to repair would fit perfectly into an infrastructure grant, and it doesn't, I can't turn to Stuart because he really is the person who has the information on this, but that infrastructure grant is given, those monies are available at all times during the year, so it would behoove the committee maybe to look at those infrastructure grants and see what is possible for Carranza Road and how much, and maybe get one of their staff out to look at the road, so that maybe we can increase the pool of money that would be available, since we need over $500,000 to repair it. Having said that, I was going to ask the same question about the municipal land use item here, but you're saying that it's just an update on overall land use in the township, Mayor? Okay, I'm not going to put you on the spot. We'll wait to hear your report.
Good.
And 2017-84, what property is this, the 2002-02 lots 10 and 11? Where are they? I meant to look it up on the tax record, I just didn't have time.
Doug, you want to take that?
That would be the, what was previously known as Lakes Construction.
Oh, okay.
And actually it's Lakes Construction and the narrow other pit that was next door. They were all one pit, they're all under the same ownership now.
What's happening with that property? What's happening with the property?
Pete, why don't you,
They modified their subdivision approval at the land use board and got a phasing plan. And so they're substituting this bond for phase one. The previous bond that's now really inapplicable because the project didn't go anywhere. So the land development board approved a phasing plan which would allow the committee to just bond the first phase. And so this would substitute a bond for phase one as the prior bond was posted.
So they haven't, in other words, they haven't abandoned the project, they intend to
Correct,
pursue.
yeah, in fact, quite the contrary, they went and got a phasing plan to enhance, I think, some deal they're working on. So I would think, I don't know how else they would do it, so.
Okay.
It was done essentially under the guise of the direction of LDB. We have to do it with the township at the committee level. But it sounds as though, from what I understand, either they have already signed or they're due to sign with a major developer to do a project.
If we get a deal, they're probably gonna sell phase one and this wouldn't sell the whole project, so this would adjust the bonding to comport with that.
Okay.
The LDB has worked with the applicant to be able to come to this agreement, to be able to get the project moving.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks so much.
Any other comments to the public at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public. Okay, we'll start with October 20th bills that were on the October 20th meeting. Need a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Franz. Need a second? Thank you, Mr. Barton. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Mr. Barton?
Yes?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll ask for a motion to approve the bills for November the 9th meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen. Thank you, Mr. Barton. Any questions or comments? Roll call. Yep.
Is that November 9th, or would it be tonight, the 13th?
The bills were ran on November 9th.
They were run on the 9th.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanted to verify.
Yeah, it's up through November the 9th,
Okay.
not including anything that happened over the weekend.
All right, perfect.
Roll call, please.
Thank you. Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm looking for an approval of minutes for the September 11th meeting, special and executive session. Need a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Approval of the minutes for September the 25th, the regular session. Need a motion, please?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Second, please.
Can I second this even though I wasn't here?
I'll second it. Any questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Abstain.
Mayor Lee?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing, second reading for the bond ordinance authorizing the completion of various capital improvements and the acquisition of various capital equipment in and for the Township of Tabernacle, County of Burlington, State of New Jersey, appropriating the sum of $1,030,000, therefore authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds or bond anticipation notes of the Township of Tabernacle, County of Burlington, in the aggregate principal amount of up to $978,500, making certain determinations with covenants, and authorizing certain related actions in connection with the foregoing. At this point, we'll open up this agenda item to the public. This is a public hearing for this second reading of this ordinance.
Before you do that, I'm missing a page of this. I have sections 1 to 3, and it picks up on 10, so I'm missing section 4 to 7, or 4 to 9.
Printed on the back of your other pages.
Yeah. You have one?
Yeah, I don't have it either.
Good call, yeah.
Which sections don't you have?
Looks like we're missing a page after section 3, Ms. Shaw.
Like 3 to 9?
Page 2.
You don't have a page 3?
Correct. Or we don't have sections 3 to 9.
3 to 9?
3 and 9 are on page 2 of the...
Yeah, I go section 1, 2, 3, and then section 10,
Yeah, you got this, I think
11, 12, 13, 14.
it might have skipped and stopped here.
Counselor Barton? Extra.
Well, I'm not gonna send them something unless I know it's right, so I'll
Okay.
pass these down.
You need one?
No. It's okay if we take comment from the public at this point, gentlemen? Or do we want to table this to get an opportunity to be able to read the rest of the sections?
I was just interested in section 7, Mayor, which I could say is the same as, okay.
Well, at this time, what we'll do is we'll open up to we'll open up this to the public. If you're interested in being heard on this topic, this specific ordinance, please raise your hand. I'm calling and limit your comments to 5 minutes or so, depending on how my clock works. At this time, we'll open up the meeting to the public. And Mrs. Brooks, let me get your hand up.
Yes, thank you.
Kim, can you hear okay?
No, not really. I can hear the committee okay, but it's really tough hearing the public.
All right, this is my chance to say to Mrs. Brooks, Mrs. Brooks, we can't hear you.
How surprising.
So you gotta talk loud.
Okay.
And only for 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 3
Can
minutes.
you hear me, Committeewoman Brown?
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, go.
This bond ordinance, in my view, is not properly conceived. And it should be divided into, money should be bonded for the packs that are needed by the fire company, because that is absolutely critical to the work they do. However, I object, and I will say that, to spending, having this township spend $900,000 on fixing Powell Road. When you compare Carranza Road. Powell Place, I'm sorry, Doug, I always say.
There's a difference.
For all, there is, and for all this time I've lived here, I never keep it. Powell Place, comparing Powell Place Road to Carranza Road. Well, there's no comparison between the quality of Powell Place Road and Carranza Road. So spending $900,000 on Powell Place Road, given the circumstance down on Carranza Road, and we've all been very patient waiting for repairs to that road, to Carranza, all of those of us who've lived on Moore's Meadow for a really long time, and any new residents. I see we have our new neighbors here, and thank you for coming. Those monies should be spent on Carranza Road instead of repairing Powell Place Road that is nowhere near it doesn't have any of the, doesn't compare to the damage on Carranza Road. And so, I mean, my request as a citizen who has to drive that road every day, as a taxpayer, is that you come up with language that segregates, and I know Mr. Lang can do this, can segregate this, but change the language, modify the language of the bond to cover the packs that the fire company needs. And then transfer the monies over to Carranza Road, because the mayor, in a number of meetings, I believe you have said that repairing Carranza Road is your number one choice, in contrast to all the other roads that have been proposed during discussions in 2017. So I would like to see you think about tonight revising the bond to address Carranza Road rather than putting the money into Powell Place. This is not to say that maybe there isn't patching that's needed, but to dedicate $900,000 in a bond for the repair of Powell Place Road is just dead wrong. And it's really a bad use of our money. It's a poor use of our money. And I think I've said this at a previous meeting, where the exposure of this township because of the damage on that road is huge. And we should not be exposing the township to that. Would you bear with me just for 10 seconds more? Mr. Guzzi, in his discussion of the contract for Carranza Road, if Chemung Township is allowing us to make the application but not committing any money, what's the likelihood we're gonna get a grant from DOT? If they don't have buy-in, if DEP doesn't have buy-in, but we still need that road repaired. So there's gotta be new thinking about how to approach the repair of Corinth Road, and that's really my main
Okay.
comment,
Thank you for your comments.
okay?
Any other comments from the public at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public. This is a second reading for this ordinance, so my thought is that if we pulled out the air pack specifically, this would require re-advertising, is that correct?
Yes. To the extent that you would be changing, the road or that making a substantial change, I mean, the standard is it likely that someone may have some type of comment, or if elected not to comment, that the change may force someone or cause someone to find that there's just cause to make a comment. So it's a bond ordinance. I don't think that bond counsel is going to tolerate any potential infirmity associated with the ordinance. So for that reason, and the reason I say that is because, these go out into the marketplace, and one of the things that I do is I certify that, the bond was properly passed and there's no potential infirmity, and I'm just not secure in doing that with any change like that on a bond ordinance, irrespective of any delay that may be occasioned. Again, there's a sensitivity to these bond ordinances because there's a market characteristic there, and to the extent that there was any difficulty occasioned by that change, that would be very problematic. So my preference would be to make those changes and to continue the public hearing and have it heard again, re-advertise it here again.
There's a long answer to my short question. There is also no direct name in this road, in this bond about various roads. You can pass it as it is and decide what road you want to do at a later date.
But the question was segregating out, splitting out the...
Why would you segregate it out if it doesn't name a road specific? We're borrowing the money to do road improvements. Why would you worry about where it was segregated? You worry about where you segregate when you go to spend the money. It's purposely left that way, so if something happens before we're ready to spend it, there's a failure somewhere else, that we have that flexibility to move to where the failure is.
You wouldn't change the amounts, you'd be obligated to go with the air packs, and you could subsequently identify the applicable road.
But let's say for argument's sake, let's just say for argument's sake that we decided to do a different road, like Corinth. How do we know that $978,000 covers it?
Well, you know right now that $500-some-thousand right now gets you to Moore's Meadow. And I'm going to guess that's all the further Mrs. Brooks is really worried about, not the rest of the road.
Let's be really clear about something. We don't cater to individual residents. It's the matter of the road that needs to be fixed. I don't care.
I'm saying
You're kind of segregating Mrs. Brooks once it's about Morris Meadows. This is not about Mrs. Brooks. It's about fixing a road. We've had more comments from the public other than Mrs. Brooks about this particular road. It's not fair to residents to single them out like that.
We have a dollar amount that we know where the majority of the problem is. It's under the dollar amount you have here. You're also applying for a grant that will get you probably in the neighborhood of $200,000 towards the project. You've also been suggested tonight by residents that you look at other grants, which we can in the meantime, that aren't earmarked to the date line that we already have. We have a jurisdictional issue on Ranza Road, all the way to the bend where Tuckerton Road heads off towards High Crossing, and then it's all our road again. If we use state money, we're dividing that expense over the entire states. If we're using our money, then we're paying a portion of Chemung, because right now their road program is situated on trying to finish Oakshade Road for a DOT grant, and they're not ready to go out for a local road program for at least another year or two, based on what they've spent the last year and a half on their local roads.
So what's
They
the
don't-
plan?
They don't do a program every year.
What's the plan for the end of Powell Place, the Chemung side of Powell, or the Southampton side of Powell Place? Or are we just gonna pave until the end of the
We're only going to pave.
Township line?
We have paved from the bridge to Southampton Township line. We have paved from El Dorado to Silly Place Road. The original section that was built in the early 80s is between the bridge and El Dorado. That's the section we were looking to pave. Why it's more expensive than the majority is it's fairly wide. I mean, it's 34 foot to the majority of it. And one of the other considerations, which was not brought up by the public, is we also look at the volume of the traffic. And we have a lot more subdivisions dumping on the Powell Place Road that use it to get out to Route 70 than we do for Ramsey Road. We don't have a tremendous population base past Fort Neck Road on Ramsey Road. So that's one of the considerations in what we're doing. But also, we're hoping to get a little better consideration from the state because it services a state facility. If you want to continue with the infrastructure and talk to DOT and bring them down, it may be a way to get the rest of that money, or at least another portion of it, to help supplement the local portion. So the bond, the way it's set up right now, gives you that flexibility that you, if you needed a portion to finish, or you wanted to do, you can divide up Powell Place Road on how far you do it. It gives you that flexibility because it doesn't lock into a road. We've talked about Powell Place Road as doing it rather than a number of subdivision streets based on a change in philosophy on how we're going to spend our road money. So that gives you those options without taking away the air pack money that is in this bond that is more critical need for tonight to pass that so we can go through the stopping period and get those packs ordered so when they start to run out in next year that we have the majority of them and we look to borrow some more money next year to finish up.
So in other words, we need to pass the ordinance because we need air packs.
And it gives you the flexibility.
And we couldn't separate the air packs out from this ordinance.
Not at this time, right?
Not now.
Yeah, I agree with Doug that we do have flexibility in the way the bond is worded with the paving. My concern is how do we pave Carranza Road if we don't have a partnership with Chemung without paving part of their property or their responsibility with our taxpayers' money?
That's where we're at, is why we were looking at DOT money that at least it's shared with the entire state, not just us alone.
Right, but even if we get the DOT money, you know, Chemung needs to be a partner in order to pave their half of the area that's not state property, right? I mean,
They're in the process of trying to finish O'Shea Road with their DOT money because they had half of it done last year. And they're trying to finish it up, so that's their priority. They're not willing to look at Comanche Road at this point in time. They're talking about local funding. And they're not going to be in the neighborhood for local funding for another year or two.
So if we got the DOT grant, I'm a little confused on something here. Does that mean we would only have money for our side of Carranza Road?
No, we have to pay the full, we have to pave the full width of Carranza Road, so we would use that state money to pave
So
both
we're hoping to get,
portions, including
okay,
Chemung.
Okay, the state, and Chemung has endorsed our doing this, is what I.
Right, but they're not going to participate.
But that only gets us so much footage to add down Carranza Road, right?
That's correct. Well, if we limit it to the grant money.
Yeah. So if you were to get, you were thinking like $200,000?
That's what they've been ranging. There's no way to know
How far
exactly.
does 200 get you on Carranza Road?
Not even halfway to the 45.
Right.
It might get you down to the gun club. Maybe.
And wouldn't you get a better price if you did the whole road, rather than half now and half later?
Sure.
Right?
Well, yeah, you get a little bit better price. The more you do on a straight shot, single road, the better the price.
Where do we do it in phases and say, okay, if the state gives us money, and it would be nice if Shimon was at the table, and the state gave us money, and we have the flexibility with this bond to carve out what we need for our half, and Shimon would contribute their half, we could finish the project.
Yeah, I don't see, this, Carranza's not even on Shamon's radar for paving. But what you could do is you could use some of this money plus the grant money to do Carranza and then do a portion of Powell Place or other roads.
Yeah. No, my concern is paying Shimon's portion of Carranza Road with Tabernacle taxpayers' money.
Right. And that's why we're trying to use the state funding to head that way.
That doesn't get us all the way there.
No.
But the infrastructure grant that was talked about tonight, have Dan look into that.
Why don't we look at that in the first place?
That grant is not as, the chance of getting that for a local road like that is not as likely as the municipal aid grant, the local aid grant. I could talk to DOT about it, but I'm not sure, with all respect to Brooks, I'm not sure that that's, that we're going to be in a good position to get that grant for this road.
It's more for drainage and piping and that type of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, there's other aspects of it. Well, we can certainly look into that, and I can report on that next meeting. And like I said, this, you know, you might want to split up that money in this bond. Maybe do a portion of, a Carranza, a portion of it to Carranza to try to finish that part, and then use a portion for doing a smaller section of Powell Place or any other roads.
Is there any indication, Doug, that Shimon this would be part of their 2018 budget, or should we meet with them and talk to them about?
I can tell you, it's not on the priority list.
Who have we talked to at Shimon? Because I had probably an hour conversation with the mayor in Shimon, and this never came up. But I can tell you that if I were in the loop in terms of the dialogue with Shimon about Carranza Road, then I would have. So we've got to somehow coordinate the communication with Shimon and, to talk about issues like this. Because as I said, I had a very good conversation with the mayor from Shimon, and this never came up.
Yeah, and I suspect it's not on our radar because they probably have no residents on that road, right?
Right. And they have a large list of roads that are in their priority list that
Right.
they're working
In spirit of cooperation, we've cooperated with them over the years on joint roads that benefit them and us, right?
Right.
And this is their road, whether there's residents at the end of that road or not. Yeah, Bear, I agree. If maybe another meeting with the mayor and get the priorities straight, and maybe take them out and show them the road. See if they would change their priority next year. I mean, if we were to get the bond and we did our half, and they did their half,
We'd be almost there.
money right there, maybe $100,000. You thinking 400 gets us all the way yet?
No,
No? How much?
closer to 5.
5. So if you get a grant of 2, then reach it for 150.
Right.
Okay.
I don't like the fact that this has been piled together with an appropriation for the air packs. This should have been separated. There should have been one resolution for air packs, and there should have been one resolution for road improvement. In addition to that, I'm not interested in this particular bond unless I have assurance that it will be, we will have a focus on Carranza Road. Mrs. Brooks called me out, and she's right. I made a commitment to Carranza Road, and I'm going to stick to that. So my thought is that this money needs to be appropriated for Carranza Road specifically. And we need the air packs, and it requires other advertisement, but this should have been separated. This should not have been in the same ordinance. We may be trying to save money with bond council fees, but it's when you're putting us in a position where we have to make a decision about roads and air packs at the same time. We're talking about buying apples and oranges. We're not talking about buying one thing or the other. It's looped together, and it's not the way it works. This is a one-stop shop. We're spending a lot of money, and we've got to be very specific about what we're spending money on. And I don't like the way it's been thrown together by bond council. Anyhow, if I can get assurance that we're going to focus on Carranza Road, I'll vote for it. If we're not going to, if this is not for Carranza Road, I'm not voting for it.
Well, we could pass it with the understanding that the committee will, at a later date, make a determination on the priority of how the $900,000 gets spent. At least get the bond passed, and we can deal with the priority later.
I'm not going to vote for it unless I know that we're going to.
We could also perhaps make a motion after this is passed, saying that it's our preference that this money be used, or there be, extremely strong consideration given to Carranza Road, so that our intent is known. I think I'm agreeing with what Joe says. I think we should go ahead and pass this, but we should make it clear, either through a motion or our own resolution or something, through some other than a word of mouth process, that we support doing something on Carranza Road.
Okay, with that being
We've got
said,
this other, Dan can look into the grants. I mean, we can hope for other things.
well, with that being said, who made the motion?
I don't think we made one yet.
We haven't. Okay.
Discuss it.
We still in discussion.
You're open to the public.
We still open to the public. No, we closed it. Did we close the public now? We didn't. Any other comments from the public? Thank you for your patience. We'll close the public at this point. We can put in a motion that this is going to be earmarked for Carranza Road, and I'll support that. So at this point, unless there's any other comments, Kim, are you with us still?
I am, but it was hard. I couldn't follow the entire feedback that was coming. I know there was discussion of whether it could be changed or substituted, and I didn't quite hear the answer.
Okay, I can summarize, or Pete can.
That would be great.
Kim, it was indicated that they would propose to pass the bond ordinance as it is without change, because changing it, I think, is problematic for the reasons I described. But Mr. Franzen indicated that he would invite or likely make a subsequent motion for a resolution requiring the committee to specifically direct the allocation of those funds before they're actually spent, after adoption of the bond and the monies are available. Is that correct, Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
To go forward toward Carranza Road?
No, just that there wouldn't be any decision made without a resolution of the committee subsequent to the passage of the bond ordinance.
Yeah,
Is that problematic for the ordinance, though?
it is, because I'm not going to vote for it if it's not earmarked specifically for Carranza Road. I think Rick's got a good idea.
But if it's left up to the committee, so my question is, if you pass the ordinance the way it is, right, and you said that Rick immediately makes a motion that the funds get spent only by resolution of the committee, am I following that correctly?
That was my understanding.
So if that's the case, and it's the committee's intention to move forward with Carranza Road, is that problematic, even though the ordinance specifically states Palisades Road? Is it problematic to go ahead and adopt that resolution that does that without the committee designating the road? The road is actually designated in the ordinance.
It doesn't designate the road specifically in the ordinance, and that's why you could pass it as it is, which would be my preference. And then, the idea that there would be a resolution among the committee that would say, none of these funds are going to be expended without a further resolution of the committee would, I think, potentially solve the mayor's concern about it being spent elsewise, because it would take a resolution of the committee to spend it, and of course, if there was right, and if it was bifurcated in the first place, there would be no difference between voting on a resolution, getting the bond ordinance passed and done now, with the idea that a resolution is going to be passed to direct the expenditure, You know, that's no different than if it was bifurcated into two different bond ordinances. Either you have the votes to pass the bond ordinance or not, so.
Gotcha.
So let me throw this out there. What if we decide to do that, and then we do Rick's resolution, and all of a sudden, we have to fix Patty Boca Road? Then what?
Committee, as I understand it, would be required, if that resolution was passed, to pass a subsequent resolution by a majority of the committee to direct the funds to be spent on Powell Place Road, of which I would assume you will vote no, and you will urge others.
But do you
to
understand
vote
my
no.
point?
Yeah.
I like Rick's idea. I think it's out of the box. I think it makes sense if we can say in a subsequent motion that we're going to earmark this money for Carranza Road and direct me to reach out with Dan, to reach out to Chemung Township, to talk about not only the partnership, but also grant opportunities. I'm in.
I think the urgency is to get the bond passed so we can get the fire department what they need. By passing
Well, that's
the
why it's
bond,
patterned this way, so
by
we're
passing the
forced to
bond,
pass
as you
it.
said, basically, we're just allocating the funds, and we'll determine later how they're gonna be spent. And the committee will make that determination at a later date.
Our office wouldn't proceed with anything unless directed by committee or resolution. You know, you have to pass a resolution directing me which roads you want to move forward with.
And that would give you time to meet with the mayor of Chemung, and hopefully, maybe in their 2018 budget, they would go into partnership with that road and get the road completed the way it should be. I mean, without that partnership, it's difficult to pave all that road, but without the Tabernacle taxpayers picking up a portion of some other town's responsibility.
Any more thoughts? So what's our time frame? I'm looking to you guys. At what point are we going to get something in front of us that says we're earmarking X amount of money out of this bond for improvements to Carranza Road?
What we could do is we could redo the, or update the cost estimate for Carranza Road, and then whatever's left over, we can look at other roads and give you a road program utilizing the money, which prioritizes Carranza. The only missing link will be the grant amount, if and how much we get from DOT.
Yeah, the key will be hearing back from DOT first.
Correct. And again, there's no way to know. I'm saying March because that's, 5 months or so, but there's no guarantee that we'll hear by March. Hopefully we will, because I want to give everybody the opportunity to spend that money next summer. So I would say sometime after the new year is when we, know definitively, but in the interim, we can put together the numbers and then you can decide on what you wanted to do with the road program next year. Favoring or prioritizing Carranza Road, whatever's left over, we can apply to other roads.
So Dan, with the new governor and the new party coming in, is that going to delay that further? Possibly.
It might have the opposite effect. There's no way to know.
Yeah, maybe there's a sense of urgency to do it before the old administration gets out.
I want to say that probably nothing will happen until the budget passes.
Okay, any questions or comments? Any other thoughts? Roll call, please.
I'm sorry, I never got a motion and a second on that.
I'll take a motion in a second,
Would you like to make the motion?
Okay, if you make it.
and I would strongly urge you to I would strongly, whoever's going to make the motion, I would strongly urge you to include the resolution or the updated motion within there, so it's all at the same time. That we can do without advertising.
So am I to understand that the mayor is inviting a motion and a second on the adoption of the ordinance after public hearing, and simultaneously a motion for a resolution binding the committee to not spend any of the money without a further, that the monies will be earmarked for Carranza Road unless subsequently revisited by the committee. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I think that's what I'd like to, suggest as a motion on this.
Okay, we have a first.
Martin?
Mr. Martin,
Can you
second.
give me this motion, please?
Yep, go ahead, Pete.
The motion again is first and second, and for adoption of the bond ordinance, and for a second also resolution simultaneously earmarking the road funds for Carranza Road, barring any subsequent action of the committee.
Okay.
We have a first and second. Roll call, please.
Seconded by, was that Franzen?
Second, motion made by Mr. Franzen, seconded by Mr. Barton.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes. I was waiting for a fifth vote, but it's not here tonight. Okay. We're going to jump around a little bit because I need a tax map for the discussion regarding municipal land use. So we'll move into Resolution 2017-80, approval to submit a grant application to execute a grant contract with the NJDOT for the Carranza Road project. In a motion, please.
I'll make it.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Need a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Thank you for your work on this, Dan. Roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Barton.
Oh,
Yes.
question for Mrs. Brown? Go ahead, Kim.
Since we just designated that money for Carranza Road, does this become a moot resolution?
No, because our thought is that we're going to try to get as much of it with grant money as we can, and then the balance of the bond can go towards other roads like Powell Place.
Gotcha.
Anything else?
I think I could hear before that's on us.
No, that's okay. No, that's all good. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes. Let's move up to the public hearing, and while the public is loose in their seats, let's move to the public hearing for 2017-82. Awarding of a contract under National Cooperative Purchasing Agreement for the hook and lift body truck. We can do both. You guys want to do both?
Yeah.
Okay. 2017, 82, and 83. This is a public hearing for purchases of 2 trucks, stainless steel dump truck, hook lift body truck. You may remember that Mrs. Brown and I worked with Mr. Kramer in looking at Public Works. We're liquidating 6 trucks and purchasing 2 new ones. So this is an opportunity for the public to comment on these 2 purchases, which hopefully will have done relatively soon, the National Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. At this point, we'll open up the meeting to the public. Seeing none, we'll close the public. Any comments or questions from the committee? Kim, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to this, since you were part of this process?
No, I just, a couple of moving forward because we did a lot of work as a subcommittee on this, going through it very painstakingly to make sure everything was covered and considered for making the decision.
At this point, we need a motion, please, for 2017-82 and 83. I have a motion for Mrs. Brown. Need a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen. Roll call, please.
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes. Okay, let's swing back to 2017-81, opposing the OPMA and OPRA legislation. This is a request from the Clerks Association to oppose a bill introduced by Senator Weinberg regarding proposed changes in the legislature, Senate Bills 1045 and 1046, which basically, in a summary, looks to create, as the Clerks Association would comment, a burden on small municipalities in terms of new regulations regarding OPRA and those processes, and no way to pay for it in very simple terms. LaShawn, I'm going to give you this opportunity to take the headset off, or even introduce Natalie, if you'd like, to discuss the concerns of the association regarding this resolution.
I think he had some research on that, so I can...
Extensive research.
Yes, I can hand it over to Pete.
Okay.
There are a number of different changes that are proposed to, under S 1046, There are significant changes proposed by the Senate and Appropriations Committee. The bill hopes to expand and clarify a lot of definitions, modify the duties of record custodians. It revises the composition of the GRC, or the Government Record Council, and changes the council from the Department of Community Affairs and not part of the, that is, changes the council from being in the Department of Community Affairs to being in but not of the Department of Community Affairs, gives them some independence. The bill modifies the mediation process, modifies access to the courts by allowing the requester to seek injunctive relief and institute a proceeding if the GRC does not issue an opinion within 150 calendar days of the filing of a complaint. The bill requires the state to create a public finance website and establish a New Jersey local public finance internet website. The League of Municipalities has outlined a lot of problematic language in their view with the bill, which was proposed in the League of Municipalities' treatment of the issue. The new language requires the public agency, when seeking a protective order, to allege that the requester has sought the records for the sole purpose to harass a public agency, which they, I think a lot of the clerks in towns find is going to present some difficulty in dealing with frivolous requests and some of the abuse that some of the clerks are experiencing. I'm not suggesting that's happening here, I'm just saying statewide, that's the league's position. The bill would expand the definition of public employee to include interns, volunteers. That's going to expand the world of Oprah documents. The bill would also expand the definition of government record to include any record that's required by law to be maintained, kept on file. Currently, if the document does not exist, the request is denied and there is no violation. Under the changes, by expanding the definition of a custodian would be in violation if they're not able to find an archived record is a significant issue for the clerks. With respect to S-1045, there are also significant changes proposed for the Open Public Meetings Act. The bill addresses issues related to communications among members of the public body, the recording of meetings, committee meetings, the subcommittee meetings, the posting of meeting-related information on the internet, makes additional requirements in that regard. The Open Public Meeting Act changes also include changing the definition to include a subcommittee, or to cover subcommittee meetings. And there was a broad array of other changes that were referenced in detail in information that was disseminated to the committee. But that's the general thrust of their position is that it will continue to burden significantly and in additional ways the duties associated with compliance without providing an ability to cover those costs, which would surely flow from expanding the definitions and the responsibilities of your clerk in responding to the Open Public Records Act and conducting open public meetings.
Does this have a companion bill in the assembly at this point?
I don't know.
Okay.
So the resolution that was prepared by LaShawn was based on the text and content promulgated by her association and details their concerns, as is also detailed in the voluminous information that's been provided to the committee.
I'm just going to ask the public, and if someone knows, just raise your hand. Is there a companion bill in the assembly for this? Does anyone know? Because as we know, in order to get anything passed, you have to have the Senate version and the Assembly version. They have to be in the middle, and then it has to get signed by the governor. So this is a long way from being done, I believe. So any questions or thoughts by the committee? Kim, any comments? Can you hear me okay? Did you hear Pete's review?
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second?
No, there's no motion or second on the floor yet.
All right, at this point, unless there's any other comments, I'll ask for a motion and a second on this.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Roll call?
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2017-84, releasing the performance bond associated with the entire subdivision located at Block 20202, lots 10 and 11, the Township of Tabernacle, replacing it with performance bond for Phase 1. We'd taken some questions during the public portion on agenda items early in the meeting. At this point, I'll ask for a motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown.
Before we roll call there.
Yes, sir.
Dave, could you go over the history of this, since you're the land development board attorney, why this bond was reduced?
Yes, this residential development received approval a number of years ago for a major subdivision. It was all one large project. About a year and a half ago, the applicant came back in and requested a amended final approval to basically divide the project into 3 phases. The majority of the work that's already been done, and you've driven by, you know there is some work done. For the most part, all that work is in what is now considered Phase 1. And so the goal of the developer is to be able to make the project more saleable by being able to sell it in phases 1, 2, and 3 rather than the entire project all at once. So based on that, they're able to bond the project in 3 different phases. And what they've done is they've submitted a bond for Phase 1 of the project, which again includes, for the most part, all the work that's been done out there already, and the balance of the work for Phase 1. And they have filed the subdivision for Phase 1. So that actually they did create those lots, and they're marketing that to sell those lots. And then hopefully things will go well, and they'll be able to sell the subsequent phases. And prior to doing that, prior to filing the subsequent phases, they'll have to submit additional bonds for Phase 2 or Phase 3. So there's nothing really substantially changed from the original approval with respect to the development other than their construction.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Roll call, please.
Mr. Gordon?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Resolution 2017-85, setting the 2017 Board of Health meeting date. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Questions or comments? Roll call?
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Next item is a motion to approval of the membership application, the New Jersey State Firemen's Association, or T. Wellhoff.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Franzen. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Roll call?
Mr. Barton?
Yes.
Ms. Brown?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes. Dan Guzzi, you're up.
Couple quick things. You may recall we paved Tuckerton Road and a joint project with Chemung several years ago. The maintenance bond for that project is due to expire in next month, the middle of next month. About a month and a half ago, we went out and prepared a punch list of items that must be completed. American Asphalt, the contractor, has not been very responsive and has not delivered a schedule yet. So if I don't have a schedule from them by at the end of the week or the beginning of next week, we're going to go ahead and just send a friendly letter to the bonding company, let them know that there is a punch list outstanding, or a letter to American and copy the bonding company that there is a punch list outstanding, an outstanding punch list for the maintenance bond. So I don't anticipate that there'll be any problem, but we're just going to let the bonding company know so that everybody's aware of that. Mayor, are you going to be talking about this project on the board?
Yep.
Okay. I was just going to let you know that Sean handed me tonight the application, the DOT application for the access, which has finally been submitted, apparently just been submitted. I know there was some discussion of a committee about 5 or 6 months ago. when
Talk
they
about
first
two different
came in.
projects.
Okay.
You're asking me about Seneca Woods?
Yeah.
I was not going to talk about
Oh,
Seneca
right,
Woods.
sorry about that.
But
So,
that's you.
I just want to let the committee know that they have submitted a DOT application. There was some significant concern on the committee regarding the access. It's a single access, 1 Route 206. So the comment period has basically begun. So I haven't had a chance to review the application, but it is substantially consistent with what was approved preliminarily by the Land Development Board. So if the committee does want to make any comments to the DOT regarding safety concerns, now is the time to do it. So if you'd like me to put together some sort of letter in conjunction with any of the safety officers or personnel in town, we can do that, but we should act on that soon.
When's the closing for that, Dan?
It's a 30-day comment period, and this application is dated November 9th, so I would say that we should probably get something in by that first week in December.
Okay, I'm going to go out of order here for a second. Chief Smith and Chief Jackson, are you familiar with this particular property that we're referencing?
Yeah, we had a meeting about it before, and discussed it.
Are you comfortable with making comments to the DOT regarding this project and the concerns that we have overall as a community?
Yeah, we discussed it before, sure.
Okay, all right. Can you please coordinate with Mr. Guzzi in terms of where to send, and et cetera, et cetera?
What I can do is I can get you copies of the application, but you're familiar with what they're proposing, and then you can either submit directly to DOT, comments and concerns, or if you want to get from my office, that's fine, just give me a call.
Okay.
I believe at our meeting, Doug made a full list from all of our concerns. So
Yeah.
You'd already drafted, I think Joe had already drafted a letter, actually.
it was sent right there?
Yes.
Sent.
Yes, sent back in August.
Yeah, we've already done that.
I think it'd be a good idea.
That can be regurgitated
Yep.
during the comment period.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, if I could get that list, whatever, I don't remember it off the top of my head, if I can get that basic, what it says, I'll write something too, that's not a problem.
Okay. Dan, anything else?
No, thank you, Mayor.
All right, great, thank you. Doug?
Just a couple things. Thomas Jensen.
Jeanson.
Jensen. Can't read my own writing, sorry about that. Did his Eagle Scout project out front. That was refurbishment of the Winfield Haynes Memorial. Did a very nice job. He shingled it, painted it, set it in concrete, put 2 nice bushes out front. It was a very nice project. He has completed that this past weekend, and we have signed off on it as moving forward.
What did they do with the holly bush?
They replanted it up closer to the town hall.
Okay, you comfortable with that?
I haven't looked at it in this rain this week, but I'm going to see where it is just to make sure we're all right. If we have to make some adjustments, we can. Not a problem.
So, speaking of scouts, we have Eagle Scouts that complete projects and whatnot. I think we may have missed an Eagle Scout that had his Court of Honor. My point is that we need to somehow, and maybe this is a point for you guys, since it's under your charter, or their charter's under you, or however that works out. But we'd like to be able to get communication, probably directly to whoever sits in this seat, to get proclamations done for the Eagle Scout, the Eagle Scout essentially. And usually I find out about it only because my son was in the troop, and now he's not. He's playing football. But in any event, I think we may have missed one person, but we've got 3. I just got an invitation the other day for an Eagle Scout ceremony that was sent directly to me, but it was sent directly to me as a scout dad. It wasn't sent to me as the mayor. But my point is that I want to somehow have a good conduit between the scout troop and this governing body to be able to recognize the Eagle Scouts as they complete their projects. I'm not sure whether that, it may not involve you at all, but
We have a liaison with them, Keith, I'll talk to Keith, pass that message along. I don't see why they can't send an invitation here to town hall so that you get it, or, committee gets it, whoever.
And we did one for Graham Watson a few months ago, but the invitation we just received is it's for the Saturday after Thanksgiving. I'm going to be away, but we still need to get the proclamations done. So just to kind of know. You didn't get anything from anybody from the scout troop, Sean?
Probably won't, I'll have to check my email.
Okay. There's one that just came out literally 2 days ago.
Oh, no.
So unless you have it, then you didn't get it. Okay.
The only way I got what this was going on is what you said.
It was because I sent it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of thing is really important. Anyway, what else you got?
We've also received a recreation grant, although I haven't been noticed in official channels, but it's been in the paper, and I've gotten an unofficial for the recreation grant to finish the dugouts at Tabernacle. So that came the other day. So I have some money there. I think that's all I have.
I just wanted to add something to your report, although I probably could have mentioned it in mine, but we've, you mentioned county grant, made me think about it. We've been having some dialogue, Doug and I have been having some dialogue with the county regarding 2 intersections in town, one in front of Seneca High School, and another one here at the four-way stop in town. The intersections certainly have a lot of traffic, and if you spend any time along Kranza Road in the morning, Monday through Friday between 6:45 and 7:15, it's a little exciting. There were some residents that are in town that sent notification to the county about their concerns, and they also forwarded those to us. So we've been having some dialogue with the county regarding opportunities or maybe some alternatives for those 2 particular intersections, particularly here downtown, also over on Fox Station Road in Cranston. So I just wanted to mention that publicly, that we have had some dialogue. Anything else?
That's all.
Okay. Pete?
I have a few things for executive session. I also wanted to bring up for the committee again that I have been notified again from the state representative for that vacant lot owner on Oak Trail. You'll recall that the last time that this was raised, there was discussion about whether or not the committee would be willing to accept as a gift, as a donation, that developable lot. There was issues regarding its developability as it concerns the new dilution model and the requirements of an alternate septic system, as well as a partial credit, which is what they're demanding from them at the Pinelands. It was discussed that in order to even take it for possession of it, there would have to be some investigation concerning the nature of the property and its environmental condition. I think it was Mr. Barton who indicated that the Township Committee was not likely interested in spending money to take something that had marginal value in the marketplace and no particular public purpose in mind. So unless there's a modification of that position, I'll communicate that once and for all. They just wanted me to raise that issue and say that they've been unsuccessful in finding any place to donate it to. Their alternative may be to let it go to tax sale, and that's just the normal course of things in any event. So again, barring any change in position, I'll just advise them that for those reasons, no particular public purpose, the costs involved in acquisition, that there's no interest on the part of the committee unless it's not been changed. And that's all I have.
What could it cost to acquire the land if they gave it to us versus going through the cost of a tax sale if they, and then with the burden of them having to go through, the estate would then be held with the burden of not paying their taxes, which they're trying to do, they have done.
They have done, which is their difficulty. Now they're paying for taxes and they're not going to get any return, is their view. Dan spoke to briefly about it. Phase 1 environmental, and there would be some cost involved, and probably some soil samples. I think you saw at a minimum you would want to see. Look at the history of the property. So as far
It's
as
basically a phase 1, and that's what that would be, looking at the history of the property, a visual inspection, and if there's anything flagged, you know, you may have to do samples in a phase 2, but, you know, that's not necessary.
Are you able to give a rough guesstimate of a phase 1?
Phase 1's gonna run between probably $1,500, $1,600.
Yeah, that's right.
And what would it cost to go to a tax sale? Court costs and...
Well, you wouldn't have to ever go to tax sale on it unless you elected to, and if you ever did, it would probably be lumped in with a number of other properties and part and parcel of a desire to foreclose on a block of tax liens and tax sales. That's the way it's always done. It's never done for an individual property in my experience. So that's certainly a cost, but it would probably not happen until the township was moving in that direction and a number of other tax liens.
I'll just share my thoughts with the committee. I got an email from the attorney from this estate, and in very simple terms, it's a family who had purchased this piece of property with the intention of building a house there, and they never did for a variety of reasons, I guess. But they're trying to give us something. They're trying to give us a piece of ground. They don't want to renege on their taxes. They've been paying the taxes on it. Does it have a public purpose? It doesn't have a public purpose today, maybe. Could it have a public purpose down the road? Potentially. It's not like it can't be built upon based on the investigation that Pete had done. My gut tells me that it's bad enough that they didn't have the opportunity to be able to build a house here. So why, if they want to give it to us, why can't we find a way to take it? But I wanted to talk to you guys before. That's why I asked Pete to bring it back up again, because I guess my thought is if someone wants to give the township something, why is it so hard? Or what's the big deal?
Can I add something?
Sure.
The only thing that would concern me is I agree that we have to do phase 1 environmental, because you don't want someone to give something to you and you end up holding the bag for some contamination that may be lurking on the lot.
I don't disagree with that. I think that, I guess my thought is that's a small price to pay with the, we could theoretically, potentially sell that down the road.
Right, but what I'm saying is you don't want a gift of a contaminated lot, because God knows how much contamination we've been through.
Yeah. I don't.
Areas of the township, you know.
You could require they do a phase 1.
I would not want to accept anything without going through a phase 1 environmental to make sure we have a clean piece of land.
Joe just made a comment. What if?
You brought it up too, Stephen.
What if we did this? What if we went back to the folks that want to relinquish the ground and say, pick up the tab for the phase 1, and if the phase 1 goes okay, we'll take it, and they'll pick up the cost for the phase 1. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, what I would suggest is let it go to foreclosure.
Never mind.
And let it go to tax sale, and maybe somebody will buy it and develop the lot and put it back on the tax roll. I mean, if we take it, unless we have a purpose for it that we can see down the road, and if it goes to tax sale and it doesn't sell, then by default it comes to the township.
Can you hear Joe?
No, I'm sorry, I cannot.
We need a speaker. How about now?
Hey Kim, what I was suggesting is that unless we have a public purpose for the property, if they do default on their taxes, let it go to tax sale, and possibly someone would buy it at tax sale and develop it and put it back on the tax rolls. If they didn't go, if no one had any interest in tax sale, then by default it would come to the township anyway. But at that point, if there was an environmental problem, it would still be back on the previous owner, right? You still go back to the owner record if there's an environmental problem.
Well, you'd have to, there could be proof issues there, you know.
Yeah.
You can only a responsible party is strictly liable. The owner is strictly liable. So when they divest themselves of it, if there isn't any way to, by virtue of their ownership alone at that point, it does not convey liability. Just because they used to be an owner. So you could find that the contamination pre-existed, they didn't know anything about it, and and they wouldn't have, there would be no recourse against them.
So you'd have to peel the onion back and see if there's someone, a responsible party
Yeah,
that
yeah, I
that
mean,
has the means to remediate it, that may be fruitless.
How big a lot is this?
Go ahead.
A little over an acre?
Yeah, I think it's 1.2 or something.
And where is it, on Oak Lane?
Yeah, on
The second, the second block on the left-hand side.
trail.
Oak Trail.
No,
Oak
Lane.
Lane.
Excuse me.
So regardless, if it's not sellable, we're going to end up with this property, is what it sounds like. Because they'll stop paying the, if they can't sell it, they're going to stop paying the taxes. We're going to end up with it eventually. And if we do, it may be without the benefit of the investigation, first phase investigation.
Well, but you would have to foreclose on the tax lien before you take title.
Okay,
There are a number of properties where you own a tax lien, and you own the property by virtue of a tax sale having occurred. But you have to foreclose on that to take title, so it's a foreclosure. And the township, last time the township did that was a while ago. You remember 10 years ago, more than that, there was a number of properties that you did clear off the tax rolls and took title to. So you'd have to go through that process, and again, normally that process involves more than one property.
I'm surprised they haven't been able to sell it, because it is a residential lot. I think I would suggest that because eventually, even if it's 40 years down the road, it's going to come off the tax maps anyway, that, maybe we say to them, if they pay for the study, we'll look at taking the property if it comes up clean. That way, we don't put out any money.
I'm gonna make a motion that we do just what you said, that we go to them and go to the property owner and offer them the option to be able to pay for the phase 1 study, as Rick had just pointed out. And if the property comes up clean, then we'll take it.
Yeah, I'd be interested, have they offered the property to adjacent neighbors?
Yes,
Yeah, and it's been listed for
that's
a
been
long
listed
time.
too. So I've made that motion. I think that summarizes my thoughts on it. And I'm very agreeing. I'll second. We have a first and a second.
Thank you. Mr. Barton? Ms. Brown?
Kim, did you hear?
No, I didn't, I'm sorry.
I made a motion that we would, ask the landowner to pay for the phase 1 study, and if it comes up clean, we'll take the property.
Okay.
And Rick seconded it. And right now, Joe Barton has voted no, and you're up.
And so you want the homeowner, the property owner to pay for the phase 1? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's as a condition of acquisition, that they have to pay for the phase 1 review, and it has to be clean.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Pete, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to change gears a little bit. If you notice, at the very beginning of under new business, we had discussion of municipal land use. Since we last met, Dan Guzzi, Doug and I went to the Highlands Commission and we discussed property here in Tabernacle. I had made a presentation to the Township Committee, and we had talked about potential uses for property here in town. And it was a very positive meeting. Dan, Doug, feel free to jump in at any time. I think it was a very positive meeting. We invited Vicki Shoemaker and also Anthony Lodicina came with us. So it was Anthony, Vicki, myself, Doug, Dan, and we met with Ernest Damon from the Highlands Commission. And what we talked about was options for essentially building another facility or doing work to this one. And we took a look at the tax map. We showed him what we were looking at in terms of the acquisition of a piece of property that's across the street. We'd also talked about the possibility of having this building redone and what the cost implications would be. The one thing that was overwhelming was that Ernest had told us that irregardless of what we do, we have to tie into the septic at the school. The septic facility over at the school is tied into Sequoia, and it's tied into the ESB. It's also tied into the school. But the school board essentially oversees that line. The one thing that they had indicated to us, the Pilots Commission, was that yes, we could do work here, but in order to expand this facility, and correct me if I'm wrong, in order to expand this facility, we would need to tie into the septic over at the school. If we wanted to build on this piece of property, same thing. So in other words, if we want to do anything with any kind of development within the village of Tabernacle, we're going to have to tie into the septic at the school. He had presented that to us. We had some dialogue during the meeting that talked about other opportunities. And one thing was that we have businesses along that corridor that are Leisure Time Inns, I think, is that the right name?
That's correct.
The correct name? And Nixon's General Store. There's also 3 residences along New Road. When the ESB was constructed, the school district was looking for more flow, for lack of better terms. And which was one of the reasons why we had done the ESB where we did, and one of the reasons why it's tied in for the same reasons we had talked about earlier. So the moral of the story is that one of the thoughts that we had after the meeting between Dan and Doug and I was that what if we decided to take over the sewage treatment facility, which out of Burlington County there's only one other school district that does sewage treatment, which is Pemberton Township. So one thought we had was, we have Leisure Time Inns in the middle of town. They can't build because of their septic. Jack McGinnis can't do anything and do any expansion of any major proportions because of septic. So one thought was that we would allow, one theory we had was that we could take, is she there?
Yeah, she's still on there. Yeah.
You there? Kim?
Yes.
Okay. One thought we had, and this is just a discussion that Doug and I and Dan had, was that what if we offered to take the septic facility and create a municipal authority and give the 2 businesses in town an opportunity to be able to tie into it, which would create a revenue stream. Not to mention the 3 houses that are along that stretch of road. So after we had the discussion at the Pilots Commission, and the general concept was that from a feasibility standpoint, those were 2 options, here or there, but either way we had to tie in the septic. At that point, I reached out to Vicki Shoemaker. I told her what our thoughts were. She presented that to the school board in executive session. Her and Anthony were in full support of us essentially working on, at least talking to them about what our ideas were. The school board voted against having any dialogue with us whatsoever about the property in Tabernacle. So my question to the committee is, what do we do now? Because we can't do anything with our land unless we tie into septic, and the school doesn't want to talk to us. So I'm going to, with all due respect, the elder statesman on the committee, between you and Kim and Joe Yates, I guess, where do we go from here? The one concept I really liked was to give the businesses an opportunity to be able to expand their facilities, which they're struggling over there with the septic. I think they just spent a substantial amount of money in redoing the septic. So I guess my question is, where do we go from here? Because I really don't know. And I'll be happy to take any questions or any comments. But that's where we are. At this point, we have a liaison committee scheduled in November sometime.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it
I'm not sure what the date is, but
It'd be interesting why they don't want to speak to us, and does it have to do with that property, or does it have to do with the septic, or a combination of both?
well, the problem was that we never got an opportunity to talk to them about the septic because they refused to meet with us.
Why is that, just out of curiosity? What's the problem with having a discussion, I guess I'm curious.
Well, they have a contract. They had an agreement with Lenape Regional to 2022 for usage of that building. We indicated to them more than once that we weren't really interested, and we'd kind of talked about it as a committee, actually a month ago at least, that we didn't want any any parts of that. So what they told us informally, and I don't have this in writing anywhere, I've asked for it in a letter, but I haven't gotten anything, is that they don't want to make Lenape mad, so they don't want to talk about anything that has to do with the property until 2022. But as Dan will say, that really puts us in a bad spot, because the amount of time it takes to get stuff through Pinelands is lengthy, for lack of better terms. So the concern is that as the mayor, I don't know where to go from here, to be honest with you. And that's why I'm bringing this back to the committee, because I don't know where to go from here. We have the board that doesn't want to talk to us about any parts of this, is the message I'm getting. Maybe we'll learn something at the liaison committee meeting, but I'm not sure where to go from here.
Have we reviewed any conditions that may have been placed on the approval of that package plant system? I somehow recall discussion among the ponds and the school board and the township regarding future tie-in to that system and the ability to make future tie-ins as I don't know for sure, but was there a condition? There were some issues there, so I think you want to have the clerk or otherwise Doug explore those conditions. Do you recall any of that, Doug? I know that at the time that plant was approved, there was an approval process, and I know there was discussion and a sewer service area, if you will, regarding the areas that it could reach, and I just wanted to explore, maybe is there a requirement that they allow or permit some type of time?
I'm not aware of any requirement, and that was built before I was involved, but.
Well, we went through the renewal process to get the ESB on.
Yeah, we went through
And we proposed that in the renewal.
Verified management plan amendment, and which now that's handled at the county level, but every place in the village is potentially able to be sewered by that plant with, obviously there has to be, there's flow limitations, but I don't know if there's anything that requires that.
Well, no, that required the school board to consent to the tie-in.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Can we find that out at least?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at the approval.
Because if that's the case, if that's the case, and then what that says is that we can still move forward with something, but we can't do anything unless.
There's no restriction as far as for public use versus private.
Not in the village.
Not in the village, no. Okay. That would be my only concern, because the only thing we've ever discussed before were public entities.
Right. I understand that once you introduce private entities, now that becomes a different type of facility because of rates and other things. Right now, it's just servicing the two schools plus Sequoia plus the draw public. Okay.
One of the things that Ernest, actually, Chuck Corner had said to us at one point during some early discussions was that he had said, have you ever thought about putting a public sewer along 206? Because his thought was that 206 and the Pinelands regs actually prevent us from having any substantial development along 206, and if we had public sewage along 206, then that would allow us a lot of opportunities. And I think he's right, actually. But by the same token, it costs an awful lot of money to get into the sewage business. But this is something we already have here in town. We have two businesses that are limited in what their expansion capabilities are. Our thought was that it would give an opportunity for income, whether it was the school district or whether it was us. But at the very least, it provides an income source and allows us to be able to have a town hall, whether it be here or whether it be over there within the village.
I'm not so sure how strong an income source it would give us. We're going to now charge the school to use it if you set up an authority. You know, I mean, if you're just
Well, at the very least, you would charge the businesses,
yeah, but I mean,
which they're willing to pay for. I had a
how much is that? I mean, I think now the school is paying somebody in the neighborhood of, you know, like $10,000 more a year to maintain that facility.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. They got hit with, Steve was at the meeting, $28,000, $30,000. Do you have any idea what the number was that they had? They had something they had to replace within the last month. It was a $30,000 bill. Is that about the right number?
I don't feel it's appropriate for me to speak about my employer.
Other reason I had nothing to do with you being the employer. I just knew you were at the meeting. Anyway, roughly in the neighborhood of $30,000, I think. But
There are a lot of expenses associated with that treatment plan, but by the same token, it's serving, obviously, the two schools. There's a need there, they have to have something. It would be no different than if they connected to public sewer, they would be paying large rates, you know, based on the amount of flow.
I think our energy more need to be directed in, do we want to do something? Do we want to do an addition? Do we want to do a new building? You know, we keep saying that we want to, and you know, we really need to hear from the public more about that too, make sure the public wants that. But I think, you know, it really sounds like it's a big hassle across the street. You know, maybe we need to continue to go forward and look at doing something here, some addition next door, with a big basement, you know. Or
we can't do anything unless we have septic tie into the
well, I understand that, and I don't see that tie-in as an issue. I mean, I think if we need the tie-in, it has to come. I don't see how the school district would say you can't tie in, especially if it's something they need. And again, that's a lay opinion. I'm not an expert, I'm not an engineer, none of that stuff, you know. So I would think that it's got to be allowed to happen, especially if they need the flow issues. You know, what it says to me is that we should really direct our energies into what are we going to do here. We know we're going to have to tie in there. Okay, it's done. We're over with that. However that works out, works out. But what are we going to do here? We're going to move public works. We're going to expand this facility. Let's go in that direction.
I will tell you this, I'm more comfortable with moving forward with additional discussion about this building or anything else we do if I have the guarantee that I've got a place to put the poop, frankly. And if you said they have to do it, well, they don't have to do it. There's nothing that requires them doing it. Surf City had litigation with their school board over property. Surf City wanted to build a new municipal complex, actually a firehouse, I think, in Surf City on a piece of ground that the school district owned, and they wouldn't do it. And they were like this with the school board.
Well, yeah, since we really don't know, and since then that becomes essential to doing anything, maybe what we need to do is ask Peter to research this and find out what legal rights we have. And go forward. I don't know what you think, Joe. Dominic.
I guess I'd like to see the minutes of their meeting to see what did they vote on, why did they
It
vote?
would have been memorialized in writing as a condition that it exists. And I'm speculating that based on the scant recollection, it also would make sense potentially that they would say any future municipal or public use in that area would be permitted to connect. So it really shouldn't be anything more than obtaining that resolution back when that was approved and seeing any attached conditions.
Anyhow, that's the update.
That's like had a lot of fun.
Well, it was very encouraging because, to be honest with you, Vicki and Anthony, they got it, and I was glad that they went, and they were glad they came. because we had a very different discussion after the Pilots Commission meeting with them. I mean, they were glad that they were there. But once they got to the school board, I guess they had an executive session, and they had some dialogue in the executive session. And they had a vote in the executive session, actually, and then they voted again when they came out of the executive session. And there was nothing on the minutes that talked about the specifics about what the vote was on. And, because I looked up the minutes online, and then I talked to Vicki Shoemaker directly, and she's told me, she said, we brought it to, Anthony and I brought it, we thought we should at least hear the township's point of view. The superintendent, the president, the vice president, and the business administrator all felt as though we should have an opportunity to be able to talk with them about this project. And there were 5 people on the board that night that said, no, that's not the case. And that's where we ended up. So we had the liaison meeting coming up in November.
Good topic, but
I don't see it on my calendar. Usually meetings are prior to this meeting, and I don't see anything scheduled for the rest of
this
the
is
year.
a special meeting now, maybe it's prior to the...
Yeah, I think it's actually, it's the Monday before, it's right before we get back from Thanksgiving. It's that Monday, I think.
I don't have it on my calendar now.
It's the Monday, it's the night before the regular November.
Which is the 27th.
Right. Anyhow, that's all I have on that. The other thing we'll talk about, and I apologize to Sam, because I know Sam wants to comment as much as he can or can't do on this. But also, I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we had a resolution that we may or may not discuss, and I want to kind of brief the committee on this. I received word late today, and saw this in writing, that the Pilots Commission is considering making some changes to the CMP in regards to specifically maintenance of fire breaks. And what they are proposing specifically is that the term fire break replaced with a more quantitative standard that will be easier to administer. Under the revised exemption in the new rules, what it allows for is linear clearage of vegetation up to 6 feet in width is exempt from the application of the Commission, as will the maintenance of such cleared areas of vegetation. Now, in very simple terms, what's happening at the Pilots Commission is that they have proposed rules that says that if you want to have a fire break in a piece of property, in a large forested area, that's over 6 feet in width, then you need to apply for a permit from the Pilots Commission. If it's under 6 feet, not a big deal, but anything over 6 feet, you have to go through an application process. The concern is that 6 feet is not wide enough for a fire break. Now, for those that don't know, a fire break is essentially an opportunity, well, we have an expert that can probably describe it better than I can, but the moral of the story is that a fire break is exactly what how it's described. It's an area to be able to light backfires, to be able to stop a fire if you have one, and it's an area of clean vegetation. So let's just say, for argument's sake, you have a piece of ground, you have a fire lane or a fire break in the middle of it. The fire break gives the crew an opportunity to be able to either stop the fire or set a backfire, and they're prominent throughout large tracts of land, whether it be on state-owned or privately owned land. The thing that concerns me, I can tell you from a personal standpoint, having an 1,800 piece of ground that has over 700 acres of planned forestry, we put fire breaks in that were roughly 50 feet wide. And they were approved by the Pilots Commission in our forestry plan back in '99. So fire breaks isn't something new. They understand fire breaks, but for some reason, there's a rule change that basically says that if it's over 6 feet, you have to apply for an application or apply for a permit. What that means is, as I understand it, that the Forest Fire Service even, if they're managing state lands, they would have to have a plow line that is less than 6 feet wide, or 6 feet or less. And if they want to go wider than that, then it would require a permit. Now, I can tell you from being a deputy warden within the Forest Fire Service and a crew member under B2, I can tell you that 6 feet's not real wide and not really practical. So the comment period for this ends at the end of this week. And I was bringing it to the committee's attention because of the amount of land that we have here in Tabernacle and the importance of fire breaks that are over 6 feet. I think I'm not sure where this came from, to be perfectly honest, but I can't tell you enough how important this is. We have Sam Moore here, who is responsible for B3, and Sam is an employee of the Forest Fire Service, and I'll introduce at this point Sam Moore III. Sammy, I'm going to be very generic here, but is there anything that I touched on? Is there anything I didn't touch on? Is there anything inaccurate in what I said? That's a very simple question.
A fire break, can be defined. A lot of it's used for prescribed fire as a fire break, but unfortunately, from our state fire warden and my supervisor, I'm not allowed to comment publicly. But we do appreciate the New Jersey Forest Fire Service support for firefighter safety and hazard mitigation, prescribed fire, and how we mitigate other hazards. I think I kind of touched on it. That's the best I can do at this point.
So it's a very narrow issue. The regulation would require an application to the committee for anything over 6 feet, which is not the case now. And that's seen, I think, by some people as a burden to landowners, where they'd be filing applications where they otherwise, and potentially the Forest Service filing applications where they otherwise would not be doing so, but for this change that's proposed.
That's correct.
So how big a break can you make without an application?
6 feet,
6
less
feet.
than 6 feet,
That's with this rule change, though, prior to the rule change, how far?
unlimited.
Unlimited, right?
I'm not sure that you can run a piece of equipment to maintain that.
6 feet?
At 6 feet,
You
no.
You can't.
put a truck down 6 feet.
No, you
No.
can't. Ours, are you counting?
I got.
Or that's it.
My finger, my thumb was needed stretching.
The bottom line is that 6 feet's not nearly enough. The ones that we did, when we were the first ones to do really planned forestry in New Jersey on a large scale, 600 plus or minus acres, and we did fire breaks that were anywhere between 30 to 50 feet wide. And that was part of the approval plan of the forestry plan that we had submitted to the Pinelands Commission that they approved. And the second phase of that, we went through the same process, same thing, and they approved that. This is completely different, and we would not be allowed to have the fire breaks we do. Now, I will say to you this, there was prescribed burn done on a property adjacent to us that had gone into our property this past March. If it hadn't been for that clean fire break, to be able to get access with equipment and materials and water to put the fire out, it would have gone a lot farther than it did. So because of the access that you're allowed in a regular forest stewardship plan, which is what we did, we were able to stop the fire. But Sammy's presence alone, he was in a hunting stand before he came to the meeting tonight, and it wasn't on his agenda. But when we found out about this, it became, and I learned a lot about it from talking with not only Sam but also with other members of the Forest Fire Service that educated me on the concerns that could be potentially regarding this issue.
Interesting, how did they come up with 6 feet? I mean, who gave them direction that 6 feet's the number? Well, we all know that 6 feet you can't even drive a vehicle down.
Well, you know where Washington Turnpike is?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah, I what they did there.
Yeah, that may be part of it. Washington Turnpike runs from Batstow up to, yeah, up to Washington, and it's a nice fire break, to be perfectly honest. And it's a great fire break, in my opinion, but not everybody's.
So what are you looking for, a resolution to push back against this, Mayor? And so I would suggest maybe get our fire department, rescue department, and OEM coordinator to weigh in on this, on what is more realistic. And what do we need in Tabernacle Township so that we don't have to deal with all these applications.
Well, I will tell you that there are municipalities that have on the books 30 to 40, 30, I think it's 30, 50, and 75 feet, maybe the widest. I'm not sure if we need that at this point. I mean, we can certainly look at that. Because the forestry permit itself, that has to be outlined, and that's going to get approved by the commission anyway. But the only thing I'm asking for, and I'm going to just take this to the committee, and if the committee decides they don't want to do this, I'm okay with that. It's kind of the way it works, but I will say that I think that if we weigh into the Pinelands Commission with this resolution, which would be called 86-2017, and the only thing I would change in this is in about the fifth whereas, the committee finds that the revised regulation will result in significant financial administrative burdens on stakeholders. It's not just farmers, it's stakeholders. Stakeholders could be me, it could be Stu, it could be Tom, it could be George, it can be Mr. Jones, anybody. Stakeholders that have land in the Pinelands, in our municipality, this will affect, without a doubt. So my only question is if the committee will consider supporting this resolution.
You know, I know this has blown up on social media in the last 3 or 4 days, but it's all over the place. There's a lot of people opposed to it, and it's really taken on a life of its own on some of the Facebook pages. But what I haven't seen anywhere is, you know, why they want to do this. And if I understand it right, they're not preventing someone from doing a 75-foot wide thing. They just want to collect the fee to get, you know, to run some paper to do it. So, you know, I mean, if it expresses how we feel about this, then fine. But I'm curious, and I know, you know, you want this tonight because the comment period is over. I think you said shortly, another week or two.
It's not my, I would have rather known about this a month ago. In fact, it was actually the comment period, there was a public hearing back on October the 4th. October the 4th, I was not focused on public hearings to the Pinelands Commission about this. I was focused on something completely different. But and you know what I'm going with it. But my point is that if I known about this ahead of time, then we would have had some dialogue much before this.
Well, is the door already closed on this, though?
No, because we have the opportunity to be able to comment up until then.
So let's see, Mayor, 6 feet is inadequate, right?
Would you say 6 feet is inadequate, Mr. Moore?
6 feet as a fire warden, especially for prescribed fire, is very narrow, too narrow.
Chief Smith, 6 feet inadequate?
All depends, right, Steve?
Yeah, all depends on the situation, how you're applying.
I think the reason they're saying 6 feet is they don't want every fire break to turn into a road anymore.
Good point.
But I'd rather have a road than not big enough fire break.
Is 6 feet sufficient?
Can't get a truck 6 feet.
Thank you.
It's gonna look, you can get a truck down a 6-foot road, but it ain't gonna look good when you look the other end.
It's not gonna be
I think another part goes this way.
I'll make the motion then, for the resolution.
Okay. We have a second?
A second, and I'm sure we can elaborate even further than what's on here.
Okay. I did say at the beginning of the meeting I would allow public comment on this. I'll open up to the public for this comment, or for this item only. Mr. Jones?
I support you 100%. I am a stakeholder because if there's a fire out here, it may get to my house. And I would ask or suggest the Pinelands Commission look at Santa Rosa, California. A fire jumped the roads there. And I'm gonna tell you, they're wider than 6 feet. And I know the fires out there were something extraordinary, but I don't think that it would take that much to turn the pinelands out here into something similar. I really think it's dangerous. And the fact that you brought it up this late, I'm glad you brought it up, because I didn't know about it. Send me some pictures of Santa Rosa and see what they think.
There was an article in Rolling Stone magazine, when? About a year ago now? That talks about, this is Rolling Stone, that talks about New Jersey being the next tinderbox, and it would be worse than anything that's ever happened in California. I mean, what can happen here is that and I learned, I had to take an S-180, was it 180, 182? 130, 190 class. And as a landowner, you kind of understand this, but living where we are, and Sam has already done some work with in terms of the Firewise, making us a Firewise community, and in other communities it represents. But if a fire got going here, it won't stop until it hits the bay. I mean, it's the Stafford Fire is a perfect example of that. Anyhow, it's your comment period. I'm sorry.
It's 1 million acres just being set up to have a problem. So 6 foot, you gotta be kidding me. I'd like to know what they were smoking when they decided on 6 foot. It's probably illegal, unless you're in California.
Any of the comments from the public?
New Jersey.
Stuart?
Thank you, Stuart Brooks, Moore's Meadow Road. And my comment, I support the resolution. My comments are essentially the same as others have said. I appreciate you taking on stakeholders and focusing on everyone concerned, because if the fire breaks out, we're all concerned. Big time we're concerned. And I would also suggest that it's not just a financial and administrative burden. I mean, when it boils down to it, it's safety of all of us. And that's the issue. I would hate to have people, myself included, file a piece of paper asking for approval for a fire break and having it sit on a desk going through intake after intake after intake. Because it's wasted time. And I would assume that at the end that approval is going to be granted, but what's the standard for the Pinelands saying, no, you can't have that fire break? Who are they to say? Frankly, I'm not sure that the fire service would say. They're the people who are the experts in this area, and they're the ones who should be designing the fire break based on the appropriate needs of the appropriate ones. They're nuts.
Thank you for your comments. See no other comments, we'll close the public. The only thing I would change, and Stuart actually brought up a good point, committee finds that the revised regulation resulted in significant financial, administrative, and safety burdens on stakeholders and emergency responders.
Mayor, I would word it that puts the residents of Tabernacle Township at risk.
Okay. So put that in a different sentence, and that's in that next sentence. Okay. Got that?
Yeah, well, we would modify the fifth whereas to indicate that the committee finds that the revised regulation will result in significant financial, administrative, and safety burdens on stakeholders, and whereas the committee finds that the proposed regulation, due to the potential limitations on appropriate fire breaks, would pose a risk to Tabernacle residents.
Is an emergency responder considered a stakeholder?
You're going to say residents and property, right?
Residents and property. I got it.
Okay. We have a first from Mr. Franz. We have a second.
Yes, Mr. Barton.
Roll call.
Mr. Barton? Ms. Brown?
Mrs. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Franzen?
Yes.
Mayor Lee?
Yes.
Thank you.
Public comment. I'm sorry, Township Committee reports. Joe?
Mayor, I think you skipped over something. We have the best practices on the agenda.
Oh, I did miss that. Doug, what do you have?
Barry? I guess you guys got a copy of the best practices in your, Doug and I go through this every year. Tabernacle were required, but when we went through it this year, we had a 92%, so we're just required to say at the meeting that you guys saw the report, and if you have any questions, you can answer.
Any comments or questions on the committee? Anything else I missed? Thanks, Joe. Executive session, that's after reports. Okay, Joe, anything else?
I'm good, Mayor, thank you.
Kim, anything for committee reports?
No.
Mr. Franzen? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kim, anything else?
What was that?
Go ahead, anything else?
No.
Mr. Franzen?
I'll pass.
At this point, we're going to open up the meeting for public comment. If you're interested in being heard this evening, please raise your hand. I'll call on you, and please limit your comment to 3 minutes. And then come to the center of the room right underneath the microphone so everyone can hear you. Mr. Jones? What's that?
Jim Jones, 16 Winston Way. Two things. The 2017-9 ordinance, I'm kind of curious right now as to whether or not the township has done any investigation as to what it would take to allow the township to build.
Which one again? Which ordinance?
2017-9. That was the public safety director.
2017-9? Okay.
Ordinance?
Yes. I'm sorry.
So is that what number it was?
Passed at a previous meeting, I don't know what number.
It was the last meeting, I think.
Okay.
Anyway, I was curious as to whether or not the township has done anything yet, investigated any of the processes necessary to permit the township to legally bill for emergency services response. And secondary to that, has the job description yet been written for that position of public safety director? So those are two issues that I'm concerned about. The third one is the chicken thing. I've asked Mr. Boyd and through him, Lisa, to see how many permits have been issued. The reason I asked that is that on the 26th of this month, I think it was, Courier Post published an Associated Press story indicating that the numbers of salmonella illnesses that are directly related to chickens being raised at home, in the yard, or wherever, have gone up significantly, including deaths since 2015.
Is that nationwide?
Yes. And CDC traces it directly to people not being aware of the safety issues, how you handle these things, what you have to do to safely maintain them. There was a child that started feeling fatigued in Iowa, and he developed a large tumor-like growth in his chest, and they thought it was a tumor. They did a little digging, figuratively speaking, and found out it was salmonella. The kid almost died. So what I'm curious about, and why I was asking about the number of permits, is how many people in town are still raising chickens, not being aware of the needs to do it safely, and are actually getting permits so that maybe Mr. Boyd or somebody else can, hey, you've got chickens, where's the permit? What are you doing right? What are you doing wrong? Still comes back that my big concern is not the guy laying eggs next to me. I'm worried about the salmonella coming across the fence or going into his house. And by the way, the article published showed a woman, a chicken in a cage on her kitchen table. I was asking for trouble. It's a real sensitive issue with me because, you know, George and other people that are involved with pre-hospital care, I'll tell you, salmonella can be really bad. You're lucky if you catch it. CDC says that they estimate that for every reported case of it, there's 30 that are not. So, hey,
Or it could be something else.
it could be something, you don't know.
But you don't know.
Exactly. You don't know that it's there. So, I know it's the rule of the town, but the people need to be aware of what they can do, or how they can safely make it happen. I'm not gonna fight for whether they can do it or not. I watched that. And it's township decisions on it. But I still am concerned with how they do it and how they can move it. I really think have some kid get handled with this stuff. And somebody like us can. Tough luck.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from the public? Mrs. Brooks? You almost lost your opportunity, I almost closed it up.
Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. A couple other questions. Mr. Jones asked about the public safety director, so what is the status of the work on that issue? Two is, are you hiring a fire marshal? Because I know that you had an ad out, but then it came off the home site, the website. And so I know you were in a real rush to get a fire marshal ordinance, so, or a modification to the fire ordinance. So what is going on with fire marshal? Are we getting one? Are we not? You know, as you know, I am a transparency advocate. So there is a lot of support out there in spite of what's being circulated regarding the proposed legislation 1045, S1045 and 1046. I'm wondering if any of you have even read the legislation. Have you?
Yes, I have.
You've read the legislation?
I did.
Okay. And so then you must be aware that the vast majority of the provisions in both bills have to do with getting more documents on the website in order to relieve responsibilities from the clerk. And so it's hard for me to actually grasp why you would be opposed to that, because that would probably eliminate a fair number of over-requests. The bills haven't been updated for years. I mean, we're talking about 70s. We're talking about some very small modifications to the Records Act. There's just been no change, and the bills are really designed to bring OPRA and OPMA into the 21st century using the internet, relying on the internet and electronic communication. So it really concerns me that you would be opposed to such changes when it would actually relieve burdens on the clerk. Did I hear you say that Natalie did the analysis because on the legislation, Natalie did the analysis of the legislation and passed on the analysis to Mr. Lang? Did I hear that correctly?
No.
Okay, so how did you get the that rapid fire information that you went through? Did you read the legislation? And those are
I read the materials that are out there and tried to boil it down for the committee.
I see. So
to be clear, I'm going to. You've got a few seconds left, but I did not pause the clock because I'm running the clock. But anyway, I was giving Natalie an opportunity to be able to comment on it, and LaShawn an opportunity to be able to comment on it.
Because they're members of the association.
Because they're members of the association, but instead Pete did.
I see. Okay. And they didn't have the clerk and the deputy clerk. Did they have any comments? Did you have any comments, Ms. Barber, on the bills? I just really want to get some sense for who's read it, who's read them, and the depth of understanding of these bills. Because there's clearly provisions, the majority of provisions, that are overwhelmingly positive for the community. So I don't really understand why you would be opposed, other than because you're being told by the League of Municipalities and the Clerks Association that they're bad, that they're going to cause financial burdens. Actually, there's so many provisions in there that enable municipalities to charge for actions that are taken by the clerks. So I don't understand why you would be opposed to such provisions.
Okay. Thank you very much for your comments.
Okay, you're welcome. And I do hope that you get the public safety director information together. It would be helpful.
Any other comments from the public? Stuart?
Thank you, Stuart Brooks, Moore's Meadow Road. Three comments. First, I want to report on what I know about the infrastructure grants. I called DOT, I think when the issue of road improvements came up, I believe in the last budget.
If I can interrupt you for a second, in the essence of your time, if you want to specifically talk to Dan about that after the meeting, that might be more appropriate, because I don't want to, you may have other stuff you want to talk about, and I don't want you to, I'm just trying to help you out in terms of your time. That's
Sure, I could do that. I'll boil the part that I want to address to all of you is that while it is a special grant, a more discretionary grant than the usual annual grants, the fact that, I guess the report to me, or the information given to me as a citizen calling DOT was, one, to encourage the township to apply. Of course, what else would they do but encourage everyone to apply? But also what was of interest to them was that there was a state facility at the end of the road, which would probably put that application in better stead than others in comparison. And the rest I'll discuss with Mr. Guzzi. I want to thank you for your support, all of you, regarding Carranza Road. It's not just that I live on Moores Meadow Road, which is attached to, but I think by any objective measure, and that road it's probably one of the worst paved roads in the township. From what I understand, it was never finished with a coat, a surface coat, and as has been reported in other public comments period, it's in just miserable shape. And I think the reason why it's in such bad shape now is because its volume is, relatively speaking, low, which means forever and a day it's never gotten the attention that other more heavily trafficked roads would get. So using the standard measure for rating which roads get improved, Carranza Road will always fall at the bottom because it's low volume. But there are heavy vehicles, there are farm vehicles, there are emergency vehicles. It's a road like any other road in the township, as well as being a bit of a corridor, and it's well beyond time for its repair. And I thank you for your concern in getting it repaired. Last comment, what's the status of getting a fire engine into the ESP? How's that going? What's the next step? What's the holdup, if there is a holdup? And I appreciate the answer to that. Timing is everything.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from the public this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public. At this point, we're going to go to an executive session, whereas the governing body wishes to discuss the following executive session matters. In the closed session for which the public shall be excluded, litigation matters related to Fran Brooks versus Tabernacle Township docket. I'm going to read all that. Potential litigation matter in the unsafe structure relates to 14 Moore Road. At this point, the meeting will be closed to the public. Need a motion to go into executive session, please.
I'll make it.
Thank you, Mr. Franson. Need a second? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Thank you, folks.
You're still there, right?